My name is Kelsey, but you can call me Kels, and you are listening to the Queer in Alberta podcast.
What's your story? What's your sign? It's like we're twin flames in a different life.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Queer in Alberta, the podcast where I talk to 2S LGBTQIA plus Albertans to share their stories. My name is Kelsey. I am a queer Filipina Canadian. I use she, her pronouns, and I am residing here on Treaty 7 territory in the city of Lethbridge, Alberta. I don't know about you, but my summer was totally jam-packed. Last time I was here, I was updating a bit about how I had been in Toronto for Pride, and that was truly the experience of a lifetime. I could probably have a whole episode just talking about what I saw there. And then right after that, I literally within days was in Vegas for another week with a friend. I just got back from a trip in mid-August or so where I went with my partner Sarah to visit her dad's side of the family. They all live in like the Muskoka region of Ontario, and I didn't really know what to expect. A lot of my friends who are from Ontario, they always tell me about the differences between Southern Ontario and Northern Ontario. They always say that Northern Ontario is gorgeous and really, really nice. I gotta tell you, I had such a little giggle because as we're driving there and it's getting farther from the city, farther from Toronto, I'm realizing that my partner has brought me into rural Ontario and basically the rural Ontario equivalent of where I specifically grew up in rural Alberta. For those of you that are new, I grew up in the Lakeland, and just by name, it's famous for having tons of lakes, so lots of fishing, boating, water activities in the summer. Muskoka gave the Lakeland, but with like way more people and a lot more money, and I was just like, I really flew across the country to go kiki in a place that was pretty much where I grew up when I was young. But you know what? We had the nicest time. We were around Huntsville, Lynx Lake. Her grandfather has like a boat. So yeah, I was living my best life. The only thing was that my allergies went haywire in Ontario. Something about the humidity. Her grandpa was like, it's because of the mushrooms. They are sporing and you do not have mushrooms like this where you live. I'm not going to question the man because there I was pounding back cold medicine and coughing up all kinds of yuck for about the second half of the vacation, and I've only just gotten over the cold. You might still hear it a little bit in my voice. That's also part of why I didn't update for so long, is because I sounded like absolute shit and I was coughing my lungs out and it was just disgusting. But you know what? I am confident this episode is going to be worth the wait. It's actually with a dear old friend of mine. He's been listening to the podcast and he decided to message me one day and say that he wanted to come on and share his story. And I said, absolutely. He works and lives in Edmonton, Alberta. And on top of that, he's also a trans man who identifies as stealth. I think it's really important that while the podcast so far has been a place to celebrate openness and pride, that we talk about the ways that you can still do that even if you're not necessarily public in the same way. And I really want us to make room for his story and to listen to what he has to say. I want to thank him so much for his vulnerability to even consider having a conversation with me and my listeners. And I truly hope that you enjoy this episode about his experiences being stealth in Edmonton, Alberta.
Hey, I am a guy living up in Edmonton. My pronouns are he, him, and I'd like to say that I'm a photographer full-time, but unfortunately not. Say just for fun.
I'm just so happy to have on the show today because he is a dear friend of mine, even if we are infected with the disease of not checking in nearly as much as we should.
We live busy lives. It's okay.
We do.
And we're both there for each other.
We've known each other for a few years now, and I think we're going to talk about some really important topics that maybe don't get that much screen time when we talk about queer issues or being a part of the community. One of the things that you mentioned in just email is wanting to talk about the term stealth. So I thought maybe we could start with, what does that mean?
For sure. I've definitely had to look up the definition of what it actually means because I feel like my definition is a tad different. To me, it just means like I don't publicly identify like as a trans guy, even though like I am. I just don't like talk about it in my everyday life. I don't, not many people know about it other than like my family and like super close friends.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the real definition means like that you, I think it's something like you do everything you can to not look that way, identify that way, or any of that.
Mm.
But mine would just be like, I don't publicly identify that way.
Sometimes people aren't like aware of the fact that maybe if someone is trans, that you shouldn't tell everybody that that's something that should be belonging to that person in terms of consent.
For sure. I wasn't stealth. Like I started out my transition completely the opposite of being stealth, I would say. Like
Mm.
I had everything my Instagram open, like I had the date I started testosterone in the bio, all the hashtags, you know, all that.
Yeah,
Um
yeah.
Everything was out, and I found with doing that it definitely made it so more people were just publicly talking like out on the street to me about it and like telling other people, which I did not appreciate.
We met in a time when you were maybe like in that kind of posting about it a little more period.
Mhm.
So the shift to going from being maybe more visibly trans to this more kind of stealth approach, what was the kind of motivation and feeling and drive behind that?
It took a while actually to for me to decide that I really wanted to go stealth and for me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just because like when I came out, like I found that like it was mainly like people sharing about their own stories and their own like journeys on like online that made it so like
Yeah.
I could kind of figure out what was up with myself. When I decided to go self, I felt kind of like guilty because I was like,
Mm.
okay, if it wasn't for these people that were being visibly open and sharing about their stories, like I don't know, I felt guilty about doing it so far because I was like, I need to be open, but then I think I just put like my mental health first, and I was like, no, like this is what I need to do.
How has your life changed since you decided to do that?
Ooh, the first word that comes to my mind would be like it's easier to be
Yeah.
stealth, but at the same time, it's also not easy. Like it's really difficult to be stealth.
Do tell. I'm all ears.
So I would say I find that it's easy to be stealth because you don't have like all that pressure to always be to have an opinion on everything that's going on like in the
Mm.
community. Like when I first came out, like I kind of had to be like a spokesperson. Like I kind of always had to have an opinion and a say on everything. I had to know like everything that was going
Everything.
on. Yeah, and it was just a lot because I just wanted to like do my own thing, you know, and like everything was new to me too. And now I just feel like it's just kind of like a big like weight has been lifted off my chest. Like it's just I can just go about my day and I can just like live.
Yeah, it's like you don't have to always be on, is what it sounds like.
And then I'll find that like at the same time it's not easy.
Mm.
Just because like then you kind of constantly have to be like on watch that you're not going to say the wrong thing or say something or do something that's going to like out you. Because there's definitely people that I like hang out with and like people that I work with that don't know, so it's there's a lot of things that you still have to keep hidden, which is also hard.
How does that feel to kind of like be on guard like that?
Sometimes it's tough, but I feel like with all the years now that I've been stealth, it's just it's easier. Like
Yeah.
I'm used to it by now. Yeah. Even with watching your podcast, like listening to your podcast, like I love to see how everyone's like talking about their journeys and like their experiences
Mm.
and all their stories. And I'm like, oh, like I wish that I could do that. But at the same time, I'm like, it's just been so like so much easier to not have to be out, I would say.
Being a part of the community without visibly being a part of the community. What does
Hmm.
that mean for you? Like, how does that work?
Honestly, it's hard because it's like it's kind of like I'm in the community, but I'm not. I know I'm like trying to say visibility, like I'm not visible. I don't know, and I think that a lot of people assume and like they've assumed that I should be visible and that like I should be open about all this. It's totally up to the person whether they want to be out and they want to share their story.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to be visible if they don't want to be, but I think a lot of I find even like the community, they assume that you should be visible. I've been on hormones now for 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I it's a long time.
It is. You sent me
um,
that video of like your whole update and everything from when you
yes.
first were on T, and I was just like crying watching it, so happy for you.
It's definitely been a journey, and I find like going through
Mm-hmm.
the videos, probably what you saw too. Like I definitely continued for maybe 2 or 3 years, updating, making like regular videos of the changes and stuff, and then I just kind of stopped.
Yeah.
And then and then in the video, I just kind of like switched to more like life experiences. So it was just showing
Mm-hmm.
me just like doing life. Like I definitely recognize that I do have privilege, like being able to be on hormones,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then also like being able to pass, able to be self easily. If I just didn't want to have to be forced to be out and have to be like known as a trans guy and a trans man like all the time, because it was honestly just getting to be a lot.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it could be just from an outside perspective really exhausting, right? Like always
Hmm.
having to be the speaking person or the reference point, the education. It's a lot
Yes.
for one person.
Hmm. Definitely. And I mean, I applaud the people that can do it or they like to do
Mhm.
it, I'd say as well. Yeah.
You would maybe want to embrace being more visible if I'm listening to you, right? If you still had that control over like how people perceive you or like who communicates that part of your identity, that consent aspect. Does that kind of resonate?
Yeah, like I found like within the last few years that I would like to become like go back to being more visible. I don't know, it's just a lot to think about. It's just been nice to just like go about my day just as myself and not always be defined by a label, which is how I was for a long time.
I feel like, again, this goes back to like just emphasizing for people like if you have a friend who has told you that they're trans, knowing that you need to like check in with that individual and see how comfortable they are with that part of their identity being shared with strangers.
Yeah, and I've found since I've become stealth, like people don't really share it as much, share about
Mm-hmm.
my like trans identity. I find that when I started telling people how I identify and how I don't, even though I am trans, like, and how I don't identify as trans, like, they understood that, most of them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they recognize that, like, oh, if this is how he's going to live his life, then obviously I shouldn't just like tell others.
That could be a really controversial statement for some people that might be listening, that you say that you are trans, but you don't identify as trans.
Hmm. Yes. And I've been met with that before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, you have to go into like labels and history and all of that stuff. Like, I am a trans man. But I find since I am stealth, it just didn't seem right to label myself as a trans man who's
Mm.
stealth. And I don't really even say like I just identify as a man. Like I'm just me. Yes, if people do want to go into all that, then technically I am. It's just I think it's important to just sometimes like disregard the labels and just identify like with however you feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Like what
Mm-hmm.
makes you feel good and like safe.
This is a part of you, yes, but you don't want it to
Hmm.
be the sole thing that defines you.
Exactly. And I would
Mm-hmm.
say like one thing too that people don't always understand is like even though that I am stealth and I do live my life stealth, like it doesn't mean that I wish that I was cis.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Like
yeah.
I I recognize and like I appreciate and I'm so thankful for like the life that I lived before because like I know that I would not be who I am today if I had been born like a
Mm-hmm.
cis male. Um, so I'm very thankful for that. And yeah, like maybe down the road there will be a time when I do identify as a trans man. Maybe there won't be, but like you have to do what's best for you.
This really highlights how these issues are not black and white, right? Like there is no one
Hmm.
way to be trans or to be queer in the province. Like there's so many different experiences of that
Oh, yeah,
identity.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
you don't really get like criticism, but people just kind of like tend to ask you like why. If you are proud of this identity and this journey you're on, then why are you still? I get that a
Mm.
lot.
And what do you say to them when they say that?
Ooh. Um,
Putting you on
I
the
think
spot.
yeah. I think I think I just tell them how like being stealth is a personal choice and that
Mm.
like no one is obligated to be visible if they don't want to be. No one has to like share their journey online. Yeah, I just kind of tell them that like this is what makes me happy.
We grew up in the era, if people were coming out, they were doing it loudly and on
Yeah.
YouTube. And, it was this whole ordeal. And so it's interesting that we kind of still maintain this idea that that's what it means to be a visible person. Whereas in my mind, I'm
Mhm.
also thinking, yeah, you might not be visibly posting about being trans and your update on your journey, but you are still you're still living a life as a trans person.
Exactly. Like I'm still here. I'm still like living authentically, even if they don't have
Mhm.
to know about my life before.
I feel like so many queer people, even like on the podcast, like we all have this, I think, from having to struggle ourselves or not having representation, we have this desire to create that or be that for other people. I absolutely fall into that category in what I'm doing here, but not everyone, as you've said, has to take up the mantle of being the activist.
It's honestly what's made me the happiest. Like, and then at the same time, there isn't many days that pass by where I'm like where I forget like that I'm trans.
Mm.
So like it's not like I can just forget about it, or like a
How
while,
could you?
um,
Yeah.
right? Like I still know who I am, and like I'm still aware of this journey, but like I'm very thankful for it. It's just
Hmm.
I find once you're open about it, it just opens up the floor almost to like anyone to just like ask you anything or like make assumptions about you. I wasn't a fan of that.
I had a conversation recently with the CEO of my museum, who is an openly gay man. And he, like when he was younger in Vancouver, was marching for the right for gay marriage and really active in like the kind of social scene for queer rights.
Mhm.
And one thing he talked about was like, young queer people really need to be vigilant right now and kind of on guard so that the rights that his generation really fought for in Canada are not erased or minimized with some of the political movements we're seeing right now that are even in the
Mhm.
United States. While living stealth and still being trans, but not visibly a part of the community or kind of participating in that activist kind of pull, what do you think about that? That need to be vigilant? How would you maybe action that in your life?
It's hard. And that's
Mm.
honestly one of the things that's like a deciding factor to be like, should I continue to be stealth? Like there's kids that are younger than us who are like coming to terms with how they identify or like their gender, whether it's like their gender or their sexuality. And if it wasn't for like the visible people online that helped me like understand my gender identity. So I wanna be that, but then at the same time I just don't wanna like jeopardize my mental health at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
Um I think I can still be like a supporter and like an ally, fight for like the rights and like against all the like the legislations that are happening without publicly stating
Mm.
like
It's like a
I was
quiet
gonna say how I
resistance.
identify. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Using, I guess, the resources that are available to you in the way that is best for you.
Yes, exactly. That's
If someone is listening and maybe feeling some of that guilt, those are questions to ask yourself about why you're choosing to be stealth. But at the end of the day, nobody can tell you what to do but you.
exactly. And like I have to often remind myself that like it's okay that I'm not visible. Like I don't you don't have to be visible if you don't want to be. And that doesn't mean like
Mm-hmm.
you need to be in the closet. Like it just means you don't have to share everything about your journey or your story if it's not right for you.
And defining it by your own terms. Like it seems like there's this persistent idea of to be an open trans person means putting everything about your life online. What if you were to maybe redefine that a bit?
I think it's definitely possible. I think if
I
you
think it'd be
choose
cool. I'm
It could be cool.
biased.
Yeah, exactly. Just kidding.
Be so awesome.
Um, right? Um, and I think if you do that and you surround yourself with like people that are not going to judge you or are not going to ask you 100 questions, about like who you were before your transition or like your
Mm,
body or like any of that. I think if you surround yourself with people that respect you and respect you enough to not ask questions like that, um, then there's definitely the possibility.
but what you were just saying there, like, I don't want to, again, suddenly put the onus on you to educate my listeners, but I genuinely think that a lot of times, even like me being a queer woman, you would think it's not that groundbreaking, but people just don't have exposure to it sometimes. So they ask you the most ridiculous questions. Do you have any kind of like things that just are a standard? Don't ask a trans friend that question.
Oh, I have a long list.
Yeah, go for it.
The main ones that stand out, as I'm sure you know of, are like anyone's about your body.
Hmm.
Those ones are kind of like, unless I am planning on sleeping with you, like there's no need for you to know or to ask.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
that's definitely people's favorite question, though.
Yeah.
um, I often get asked, like, what was my name before I transitioned? Also, I don't know why that matters. Um,
Hmm.
just any questions that wouldn't really make a difference if they knew or not. We don't exist for your curiosity. Like, I saw
Yes.
something before where it was like, if you want to know questions, just Google. Like, if you really want to know, just honestly, just Google it. Like,
Hmm. Yeah, we do have this resource of the internet, but also
exactly.
critically engage with whatever is on the
Yes,
internet. Make sure it's
that's
not
true.
just your mom's like Facebook group, you know?
Yes, for sure.
And that's something I'll never understand. Like, what is the onus that somebody feels to just ask those invasive questions, whether it's to you or to me for our respective
Yeah,
experiences? I think everybody sometimes could use a healthy lesson of, do I need to know this? Is this
right,
something that I need to put on that person?
right.
If not, if you wouldn't feel like you would enjoy someone saying that to you, reevaluate, reassess.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you want to be asked the same question? If not,
Yeah,
don't
maybe
ask.
we hesitate. Circle back. Every once in a while, I do look at your photography page because I think it's so fun that when we were first like friends, you talked about photography and how much you enjoyed it, and look how successful you are with it now. Like, I think that's fantastic. During Pride Month, I believe you were posting a little bit of queer content, hey?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little
Um,
bit about that?
yes, usually when it's Pride Month, I just I don't feel forced to. I want to post more content because like I am proud of this journey. Like I am proud of this experience and this journey that I'm on. So this, I think it was this year around, I was just like, I don't really care. Like I want to post this stuff because I'm proud of it without, and I can, and I did post without flat out saying like anything about
Here's
myself
me.
personally. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was definitely sharing stuff and taking photos, and like I said, like I'm proud of it. I'm just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you're not like wanting to be the full front focus, but it doesn't mean that
Hmm.
you can't still celebrate during this month that's supposedly dedicated to queer celebration.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
definitely Pride Month is kind of hard. Because sometimes it's like, oh, if I do post this or if I share this, like what will people think?
I find that's really interesting to me that, just because you're posting something that would be supportive of queer people during Pride Month, that would make people question you. That's that bugs me a little bit. Is this the first year that you've kind of taken up that space a little bit?
The last few years I think I've been sharing like a little bit, but this year I know like I my hometown raised like a pride flag like at City Hall. So I was like, I need to take this photo because it's just so like
No
monumental
way.
almost.
No
Yeah.
way.
Yes. And I was like, I'm sharing this picture because it's just so cool. And yeah, I'm still allowed to be proud, even though I'm not like out. And I think a lot of people forget that also.
It also touches on the differences in our experiences because, and I mean this with like all of the love and support that I can give you as a friend, but I imagine that there are some struggles and hurdles with being openly trans in Alberta that I wouldn't experience as being someone that's a queer woman.
Yeah, but it's also like so many years ago. I'm like, I don't remember.
Yeah, it's true. Maybe it could be different now.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. Yeah. But I think I genuinely think that is so cool that you let yourself kind of tap into that part of your identity in a way that felt right for you. And how did it feel after, when all was said and done?
Like after I was sharing the stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for like Pride Month with your hometown and the flag and being able to celebrate.
Yeah. No, it felt good. It just like made me feel proud, you know? Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like the best way that I can describe it.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Yes, more of this. More of this.
Yes.
Yeah, this is such an interesting conversation, and it would be even more so interesting to chat with you again for the series in like a year or something and see how you're feeling about everything.
For sure. Because I'm thinking like, or what if we had done this podcast like way back,
right?
like at the start of my transition? Yeah, that would have been interesting too.
Yeah, because like for what I remember when we first connected and became good friends, like you, this is so random, but you were like getting rid of a bunch of your old clothes, and quite a few of them, like you were posting your stories about them. They had like, little gender symbols on them, like very open and out and visible. It was kind of like clothing. And so it's reminding me of when I first came out and I was wearing like my horrible, like 12-year-old boy snapbacks and all that kind of stuff. Like, interesting that we both kind of had this like very, very out in one way kind of representation, but now I would feel I'm more comfortable and out now.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely my whole closet was full of t-shirts like that.
Oh, I had them too. And now I look back at it, I'm like, ugh.
Right?
And that's not to like shame anybody that likes to have like really rainbow clothing or anything like that, but it just wasn't me.
Exactly. You don't have to wear how you identify or how you feel on the outside for people to know, you know? But I
feel
more
more comfortable. Yeah, and I feel more comfortable now, like wearing clothes that I actually like and manifesting my queerness in a way that feels authentic to me.
I felt like not compelled to be on the podcast, but I just wanted to like get out my story, just about being self, because I know like all of the other guests you had were like so open about sharing their stories and their journeys, which was like awesome, and like I loved it. But then I was like, I still kind of want to share my journey, even though my journey isn't open. With that, yes, exactly. Maybe like down the road, like I won't be stealth, but maybe I always will be. But like what I'm doing is like best for me at this time, and like best for my mental health, and like it's what makes me feel more comfortable, and I'd say more myself.
I try really hard to be I try really hard to be openly queer every day, but also it's just the way I am, so you can't hide it. But there are definitely those moments where when you said safety, like you have to assess, like, is this stranger potentially super homophobic or whatever it is? And as much as I want to be 100% queer all the time, if it's genuinely going to be a threat to my personal safety, sometimes you do make the decision to just not talk about it or not be visible with it.
For sure. And I've had that experience actually with members within the LGBTQ community. And then once I tell them, like, I would come out to them. And then since they're within the community, they think that almost gives them the right to just ask me anything. Like, to just, ask all the invasive questions. And I'm like, just because you're in the community doesn't mean you can ask me this.
Yeah, you don't get the hall pass. Yeah.
No. I think it was when, like, how we like kind of first met is how you shared a photo of Pride. Wasn't it an Edmonton Pride photo?
Something like that, yeah.
I think it was that.
Days.
Yes. I mean, Tumblr did me so well. I mean, Tumblr helped me a lot.
Brought us together.
Right? Back before Instagram was really...
Oh my God. Yeah, it was gay central. It was a period for sure.
Oh, I still have mine. It's cool to go back. But I was gonna say that with Pride actually.
Hmm.
Like I've only been to Pride once, I think. Being stealth, like there's not really a place for you at Pride, and that you just kind of feel like you almost shouldn't be there because you're not. It's not like you're there as an ally. You're there like as a someone a part of the community, but then you're stealth, so it's like it's a different feeling. So next summer or whenever there is Pride, we need to
Uh-huh.
plan something and we need to go.
Yes, I have this dream. I want to go to Montreal Pride or something like
Ooh.
that because I just think it would be so much fun. And then, of course, like I've been to Edmonton and Calgary Pride and it's a
Hmm.
blast, but this is a large scale
Yeah.
experience, right? Don't put ideas in my head.
Or I was even thinking World Pride would be so much fun.
Where's World Pride? I feel ignorant.
It's in Australia,
Okay,
right?
okay. I have no money. Let's go.
Let's do it. Worth it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, of course. Anytime I get to kiki with my long distance best friend, like, yes.
Right. Yes. And we need to meet up soon.
Yes, please. I've been living in depravity for a whole pandemic. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Queer in Alberta. Again, I just want to speak to bravery in opening up and sharing everything that he did with me. And I think that it's important that, especially when we think about our trans siblings in the community, we really think of the best ways we can be allies. So, consent surrounding sharing identity and personal details, not asking invasive questions that we really don't need to know the answer to. I think these are ways that we as a community can continue to lift each other up, and I really want to thank for taking the moment to speak and share his truth with us on the series today. If you want more Queer in Alberta, More Queer in Alberta is coming. Season 1 for TELUS Optic TV is out on September 19th. We should basically have a countdown because it's getting so close. If you do not have Optic TV, you'll be able to watch the episodes for free on Story Hive's YouTube channels, as well as I will be releasing them here. I just hope you like what's coming out. It's been a lot of love, it's been a lot of labor, and I am so thrilled to share it all with you. If you're in Ottawa, I'm going to be there from September 20th to 23rd. I am speaking at the Shaw Centre at this very fancy conference, and I've never been to Ottawa before, so I'm going to need some friends to show me around. No matter where you're listening from today, whether it is Alberta, a small town, or one of the big cities, or maybe somewhere else in the world, bottom line is I hope you are feeling celebrated, seen, and loved for the amazing person that you are. Until next time, see ya!